Sorry, I had to get you guys in traveling a lot.
It's okay. We've seen you.
Great reception, so another, maybe that you have to leave it, so.
Yeah,
Great reception.
Yeah, because it's from here up.
I've been traveling a lot. I spent a month in Aspen. I'm here. Yeah, right. You're tired.
I thought you were. It's never the end.
365 days a year. Yeah, every day, no matter where I am in the world. I work. That's like I'm tired. You're retired.
Yeah.
So,
Stand by.
good morning, Ingrid.
In person. Good morning, everyone. It's 9:30 and it's time for the planning board meeting of March 9th, 2023. Ms. Gaskins, would you please call the roll? I know we have some that are absent, emergencies.
Okay,
Okay.
member Chinovsky,
Here.
member Brown,
Here.
member DeMoss,
Present.
chairperson Goldenberg,
I'm here.
town attorney Rubin,
Present.
town planner Allen.
She's here.
Present. Okay, and members Mendelson, Powell, and Adwar are absent today.
All right, please, everyone, remember to silence your cell phones. And we call rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Yes, four is a quorum. That's why we're waiting for you to do this work. Is there a call for a motion to accept the agenda as presented? There are a few changes. And that will be for the applicant. We're moving 9C and 9B. We're reversing them so that the applicant does not have to sit here through a number of different things that don't concern them. Is that correct, Ms. Gasson?
That is correct.
Okay. I will take a motion to approve the agenda as ordered.
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
And all in favor, say aye.
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 All right. For those giving testimony, please stand and raise your right hand to be sworn in by Ms. Gaskins to provide testimony for the application that you are affiliated with. Also, for those providing testimony, and there is no Zoom, being sworn in, you will be placed in a virtual waiting room, and that doesn't need to be done. So, Ms. Gaskins, would you please swear in the applicants?
By the authority vested in me as a notary of the state of Florida, do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you.
Just be aware that public comments will be limited to 5 minutes each. Should there be any public comments? And I think does anybody have any public comments? All right, let's move on. Approval of the minutes of February 9th, 2023. Are there any corrections or additions to those minutes? If not, I will ask for a recommendation to approve.
Motion to approve.
Second,
Second.
all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, is there any unfinished business? I believe there is none. So let's move on. All right, the next is nomination of chairperson, vice chairperson for a one-year term. It's amazing that 1 year has passed so quickly. I think that what they say, the older you get, the faster the time goes. Nominations are now open for chairperson, and I would hope that I would be able to serve again. Are there any nominations?
I nominate you.
Oh, thank you.
Sure.
Second.
Second.
Can we, do we need to vote on that?
You can do them all together, so you also
All right.
can nominate.
And I spoke with Eileen, Ms. Mendelson, and she said she would like to serve as vice chair again. Anybody else opposed to that? No. Do we need to do that as a formal nomination?
Yes.
I nominate Arlene Mendelson. A second,
Second.
everybody in favor of all these nominations? Let's all say aye.
Aye.
All right. Thank you very much for your support. All right, now let's move on to, we are flipping 9C to 9B. Application development number 22-0010. Leonard Zetland, is that how it's pronounced? Is that correct? Application by Akbar Mondo Nuez, Boat Lifts and Docks of South Florida for a special exemption approval to install a 13,000-pound capacity boat lift for the property located at 4216 Intercoastal Drive. Does any member have any ex parte communications? Hearing none, let's move on. At this time, I now open the public hearing. Ms. Allen, please present your recommendations regarding this application.
Very good. Good morning. For the record, Ingrid Allen, Town Planner. We'll go ahead and start with just some aerials of the property. Here we have, oh, there we go. Here we have an aerial looking towards the dock. As indicated, this is a request for, it's actually a 4-post, 13,000-pound capacity lift. As I indicated in the staff report, the applicant has obtained the Florida Department of Environmental Protection authorization, as well as U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I provided those file numbers in your report. Here you have survey of the property, existing conditions, and here are the proposed conditions. I've gone ahead and put a little red arrow, which actually shows the boat lift. This property is zoned residential single family, and therefore they are required based on the lot size of the property to provide a 25-foot side setback, which they are providing here. Now go to the next slide. Here they show that the top of the lift is at 4 feet. They did not superimpose the boat. Again, this is not a requirement of the code, but if the property owner knows the type of boat, I often ask their agent to superimpose it to show that they're consistent with the definition of boat lift. But again, if they don't know the boat, I typically have them put the little note there that, you know, they will be compliant. It's a requirement of the code regardless. But it's just a little added note that the applicant has placed on there. According to section 30-68H1A, the installation of the boat lift shall be subject to special exception approval by the planning board. And the planning board does have the authority to approve with conditions or deny the application. And if the planning board does decide to approve this application, prior to the construction of the boat lift, the applicant will be required to obtain a building permit from the Town of Highland Beach Building Department. And pursuant to section 30-21G, commencement of the construction shall be initiated within 2 years following the date of approval by the planning board. Staff has reviewed the application request, and the plans, which are date stamped received January 31st, 2023, and finds that the project is consistent with Chapter 30, which is the zoning code, including the special exception criteria of section 30-36 where applicable, as well as the town comprehensive plan. I'll be glad to address any questions, and the applicant's authorized agent is here as well to address any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Allen. Thank you, Ms. Allen. Does any board member have any questions for the staff? Hearing none, the applicant, you may now make a presentation. Please come to the podium if you would like. Provide your name, business, and affiliation with the applicant. Does the applicant wish to offer any rebuttal or any testimony at all? Just be aware for anybody in the TV audience, just 1 second. There is a little bit of a hearing issue, so that's why it might be a bit of a delay. Go ahead.
My name is Akbar Manda. I'm the contractor for boat lifts and docks of South Florida. I was contacted by Shannon to do our boat lift installation. I just wanted to show that his property is on the intercoastal, so it's not going to be affected by any views by the neighbors. So it's like a big ocean intercoastal, so you have ample spaces for any boat to come in. Not having influence with the navigation issues. And the species is wide enough, so it's not causing issues with the instructional. Where you can install and the boat can come in and be able to lift the boat out of the water. So it doesn't provide any instructional conflict with the town of Highland Beach. And as for surety state that we got permission for Army Corps and the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, they have no issues. We make sure that they have ample size setback for the neighbors, so it's not encroached to the property of the neighbors on the south side, the north side of the south side. And since it's been installed on the north side, and it's not affected by the south neighbor, so that's for a few aspects, not that much of issues on an aesthetic perspective. It's really there to provide extra protection for the boat. So that way you don't have to worry about maintenance of the boat or the depreciation value of the boat that the owner may have. They put in the boat. And he already have a floating jet ski platform on the south side. So the north side is the best place to put a boat lift for him. And since the south neighbors doesn't have any issue with the boat lift, he already have one for his jet ski on the south side, so they will not have any issues for the boat on the north side. Do you have any questions?
Are there any questions of the board members? Hearing none, I want to thank you.
I'll make a motion that we accept the application.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, that public meeting now is closed for that. Thank you very much. All right, now we need to go back to 9C, which is the proposed amendment to the town code of ordinances to incorporate sea turtle protection lighting standards. Thank you very much. Oh, yes, it is thank you, but it has been approved. Yeah, and they are out of here. Okay. All right, Ms. Allen, it is your turn. And I'm going to make note, you have Jeff here to back you up in case there's a problem.
While Ms. Gaskins is working on the PowerPoint, there's a lot of information here. I was hoping our sea turtle permit holder would attend today. She did confirm that she was able to make it. Maybe she's running a little bit late. So starting on page 21 of your packets, you see basically an introduction to this item. Actually, the memorandum that went before the commission on October 18th kind of gives a little bit more analysis, if you wish, on this whole issue of sea turtle lighting. So I'm going to actually go back to that October 18th memorandum, again, given it has a lot of the analysis. So going to page 24 of your packets, again, I'll just briefly go over the introduction to this ordinance. So right now in the town code, there's basically two chapters that address sea turtle lighting. One is chapter 30, which is a zoning code. And as you can see on the top of page 24, I provide that one regulation that we do have. It's section 30-85. And it says that all lighting of all structures east of State Road A1A shall comply with the sea turtle protection lighting standards as adopted by the town. That's the only reference to sea turtle lighting that we have in section 30. The other chapter where you see a reference to sea turtle lighting is chapter 4. And again, right, the sentence after that, it says that the lighting standards that are referenced in chapter 30 are actually found in that section 4-8. And they basically say that there should be no artificial light that shall illuminate any area of the beach which may be used for turtle nesting and hatching during the period from March 1st to October 31st of each year from dawn to dusk. That's all we have in our code. So as you can see, section 4-8, which gives a little bit of the meat and potato, but not much, it does not address the different types of artificial lighting sources, for parking areas, for walking paths, for pools. None of that is addressed. And it doesn't talk about structures that are on the west side of A1A, right? Because you could have a structure on the west side, and if you could see that light from the beach, if it's visible from the beach, whether it's directly, indirectly, it could impact sea turtle nesting and hatchlings. So again, right now the code is very limited. Also provided on that page 24, some of the goals, objectives, and policies that we have in our comprehensive plan that talk about sea turtle protection. So this is just to show you that in the town's comprehensive plan, which is sort of, the vision for the town, these are broad goals, broad objectives and policies that we have several in our coastal management conservation element that again justify the protection of sea turtles. Now, let me go back to this page here. On page 25, I also wanted to point out, which I do in the staff report, that the sea turtle lighting initiative, if you wish, it's also part of the town's 2022 strategic priorities plan, in addition to being policies and objectives in our comprehensive plan. And the ordinance is based on the state of Florida model lighting ordinance. So the state provides this ordinance. So a lot of municipalities, especially smaller ones that don't have a lot of staff, they provide an ordinance. So there's really not a lot of legwork done. A lot of the hard work is already done. So we did base our proposed ordinance off the state model. I've gone ahead and provided you in your staff report some of the, subheadings, if you wish, purpose and intent, applicability, so on and so forth. I've also provided you some information from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation with regards to the last 5 years of data that's coming out of the town of Highland Beach. And actually, the town has more documented sea turtle nests than both the city of Boca Raton and Dania Beach. I provided a table on page 25 and also on page 27 of your packets. You could see the numbers for the variety of sea turtles, what you see here on the east side of Southeast Florida's loggerheads, green turtles, and leatherback. So you have the numbers for Highland Beach, Boca, and Delray. Interestingly enough, Juno Beach has the highest in Palm Beach County as far as nesting. Let me now go ahead to the PowerPoint if it's ready, Linelda. Just want to point out a few things real quick. Here we go. So I just wanted to provide this diagram to you because in the, is it flipping? Okay, no worries. You want to click it or shall I? Okay. So in the ordinance, they talk about frontal dune. So I think there are quite a bit of definitions in the ordinance. So this diagram, I think, helps for those of you that are not familiar with frontal dune versus back dune. I think the illustration helps. Obviously, the frontal dune in the front is a bit helpful just to get some perspective. And in the ordinance, there is reference to this long wavelength type lighting. And typically this type of lighting is amber in color, orange. Sea turtles are not disoriented with these amber type lights. They do get disoriented when you have big white lights, right? Because the turtles, that you have the moon shines on the water and that kind of guides them back to the ocean. But if you have a light that's similar white shining down from a condo, they think, oh, that's where I need to go. And they end up slamming into the retaining wall of the condo, right? So the amber lighting studies have shown that that does not disorient the turtles, which is why the ordinance promotes these long wavelength type lighting. So here's an example of it. And also, in the ordinance, we talk about shielded, right? This is another example. So you have the bad example of an unshielded bulb. It's white. Here's the good one. It's shielded. So the light goes down. It doesn't go all around. And again, with this long wavelength amber color light. Again, some other bad and good examples. Here's the incandescent light white. Again, not something we want to promote. And then here you have the amber, the good light. And here again is an example of an unshielded light versus a full cutoff, which is another term that you'll see in the ordinance. I believe it's also provided with a definition, less light spilling out. In the ordinance, there is a reference to a transmittance of 45%. And this actual diagram is in your packets, and we'll give you a good example of the 45%. It's obviously in between here. Here's another example that I found to show the 45%, a little bit more clarity. So now I'd like to just jump back to the ordinance, to page 21, which is the memo that I provided for you today. As I said, I just wanted to give you a little bit of analysis from that October 18, 22 memorandum that was given to the commission. And now we could talk about on page 21, the commission had asked to have the ordinance go to the Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board. They gave their recommendation, which is in your staff report. And they also asked that the ordinance go before or be routed to the Florida Fish and Wildlife Commission as well as Gumbalimbo. And I provided their comments here. So I'll go through those quickly. So for the Florida Fish and Wildlife, their comments were to add a foot candle definition consistent with the state of Florida model lighting ordinance, which I did go ahead and add that on page 30 of your packets. You'll see that it's bolded and double underlined to distinguish it from the rest of the ordinance. Florida Fish and Wildlife also suggests that you have a light transmittance of 15 to 30%, which is obviously a lot darker. Now, the town, what we're proposing in the ordinance is again 45%. This is what the state model ordinance suggests. And also in your staff report, I provided on page 22 a table of what other municipalities, what they have in their sea turtle lighting ordinances in terms of light transmittance. And you could see that both Palm Beach County and Boca Raton, and then there's Delray Beach, Juno Beach, and Ocean Ridge. They all follow Palm Beach County's ordinance, and they all have the 45% or less. I mean, you can go lower, okay? Continuing on the Florida Fish and Wildlife comments, they also made a comment about the temporary construction lighting that we reference in the ordinance, to turn it off during sea turtle lighting and then restrict the minimum number of foot candles necessary to conform to construction safety regulations. Again, we're looking for the board to comment. No changes were made in the ordinance. If you feel something should be incorporated based on something Florida Fish and Wildlife commented on, then by all means, you can add it to your motion. And then on page 22, you have the comments that were provided by Gumbalimbo. They wanted us to revise the definition of beach to reflect the toe of the dune rather than using the term permanent vegetation. Again, we followed the state model of the definition of beach. They also asked to provide the certified wildlife lighting definition where choices can be found. When you look at the certified wildlife lighting definition that's in the ordinance, I think it's pretty clear. If you're not sure what that is, you can obviously Google it. I don't typically like to put like web addresses in a code because web addresses can change. You don't want that in the code. They also indicate for temporary lighting to include cell phone screens. Now, I did go ahead and add that to page 31, against bolded and underlined. I thought it was a reasonable addition. They're recommending a light transmittance of 15% for all windows within 100 feet of the toe of the dune and 45% for if you're 100 feet beyond the dune. And then for proposed existing and interior lighting, they wanted to include the removal of televisions away from the windows. Again, I've added this in the ordinance. I thought it was reasonable. It's bolded and underlined on page 37. Now, again, if the board feels differently, by all means, make your recommendation accordingly. I also note in your staff report on October 18th, when the commission reviewed this, they asked to put some examples of colors under that definition of long wavelength. So on page 31, you could see that we added the colors just for a little bit more, just for better clarity. I did want to make one other note to the board here. On page 36 of the ordinance, You will see letter J on the top of the page. It's actually also page 8 of the ordinance, but it's page 36 of your packets. You could see that letter J is existing exterior and interior lighting. Now, the next sentence, which says all existing exterior interior lighting shall be subject to the following regulations. Now, the state model ordinance, if follow me, if you can, hopefully I say it very clearly. The state model ordinance doesn't say shall for these things, but because the rest of the ordinance, everything is a shall, I went ahead and added a shall. Now, I want to bring it to your attention that the Palm Beach County's code, their sea turtle lighting ordinance for these measures here that are listed on J1, all the way through 2. These particular measures, they taken it exactly as we did from the state model ordinance. They indicate that these can be used to reduce or eliminate the effects of all exterior lighting and hatchings. It's not a shall in the Palm Beach code, okay? They basically, it's a remedial measure. It's a recommended corrective action. So I really like to hear from the board. Do you want these items under J to be a shall? Shall means you have to do it. Or do we want to mimic what the county does, which is a recommended corrective action? It's not a requirement. For your information, Boca Raton, they have a shall. It's required for window treatments in all windows visible from the beach. You know, you have to, add these window treatments or make window treatments. I also found that Golden Beach, which is in Miami-Dade County, they have for these measures in J, they made them a shall. So there's, again, you can decide how you would like to have it. So I just want to make that clear to the board.
Good, is that
yes.
with existing or new construction?
Well, it says right here, existing.
Existing.
Yeah, it's existing. Yeah, we
Okay,
have
just wanted-
in the code, in the proposed ordinance, I should say, on page 32, we have under E, standards for exterior and interior lighting affixed to new structures, new construction, and then improvements to existing structures. Yeah, so. And I also wanted to mention there was many pages in your backup that were specific to a 2021 lighting survey that was conducted for Highland Beach. This was done by Palm Beach County, and they indicated that the survey was informal, but as you can see, there was a lot of lighting on the beach, right? A lot of impact. So I think that is a good information to have for the board as you move forward in making a recommendation to the commission. And that pretty much sums up the overview. I'll be glad to address any questions. Oh, I'm sorry. Joanne Ryan, our sea turtle permit holder, is here if you want to ask her any questions. She's actually on the field, so.
Yeah, I'd like to
Yeah.
hear from her if possible. Yes. Does she has to be sworn in?
No, it's not
Okay.
quasi-judicial.
Introduce yourself, please.
My name is Joanne Ryan. I am the permit holder for the town of Highland Beach through the Florida Fish and Wildlife Sea Turtle Program.
All right. Do you have any comments you would like to make before we ask anything?
Do you have any questions that I can make comments on?
Yes. Are there many issues that are coming up with lighting on the beach?
Yes. Okay, so there are certain areas of the beach that every year we do have disorientation out there. And every year I'm obligated to report that to Florida Fish and Wildlife, and I also report it to your code enforcement. Whenever we have a hatch and all those hatchlings go west instead of east, I'm obligated to report that. Adult sea turtles, okay, we had more false crawls last year than the previous year, but it seemed to be a trend statewide. So in the town of Highland Beach, we had just under 2,300 crawls, which means turtles that came out of the water to attempted to nest in 2.8 miles of beach.
Well,
Of that 2,200 some odd number, we had about just over 1,000 nests. So it was less than half actually came up and nested. I can't say that all of it was attributed to white lighting. It could be people on the beach. It could be people out there with flashlights. Any white light will spook an adult sea turtle. So when they come up, heard the old bumper sticker, sea turtles dig the dark. Well, they do. They're looking for a dark place to come up and lay their nests. So if anybody's out there, even if they light a cigarette, it can spook a sea turtle.
Yeah, I've actually been on the beach when one came up and we backed away real quickly, but she said no. She came up later.
Right, right.
All right, so your recommendation is that we turn off all the lights during turtle season, or that we have to go back and shall make people change their lighting?
I'm not really well versed on all the ordinances, but I can say this, the town of Highland Beach is relatively a very sea turtle friendly town. Everybody loves to come out and see what we're doing out there. We engage the public all the time. And there are certain buildings that do have a lot of white light, from their parking garages. I wouldn't say somebody's TV is going to be a huge problem out there, but it is the white light in the parking garages, the new construction, if they're working and they didn't turn the timer off. We've had a couple of homes here that it was blaring white light all night long. So we're out there pre-dawn. If we see this stuff, we take pictures, we send it over to Jeff, and he will go and make sure that the property manager shuts the lights out. And it usually happens pretty quickly, but there are, the Delray Sands has a lot of white light. A lot of the surrounding condos have parking garages that have a lot of white light that's shining on the beach.
Is that the east side or the west side that you're talking about?
Well, it's the west side of the beach. So,
No, I meant the east side or the west side of A1A.
Oh, it's the east side. It's all the beachfront. Yeah. The west side of A1A, we get a lot of sky glow. We have a lot of, we have car dealerships here that have big white lights. Even FAU Stadium, you can see it on a dark night, you can see that sky glow. There's nothing we can do about that, but what we can try and do is control the beachfront.
Is there a prominent time that turtles will come up, or is it just a whole mix of the night?
It's just anytime after dark. I've been out there actually 9 o'clock at night releasing hatchlings and had a sea turtle swim right into us. And we were like, oh my God, you should turn around, and of course you went right back out, but they can come in anywhere from 9 p.m. I've been out there at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and they're still out there finishing up in some cases. So yes, anytime after dark.
Now, the season is March through October, correct?
March 1st to October 3rd.
When are they coming in when do they normally come in?
Okay.
March, April type?
Okay, so right now we're documenting leatherback nests, and I'm proud to say we've already had one leatherback here in Highland Beach very early, March 3rd. 3 days.
And they are the largest of the sea
They're the
turtles.
largest of the species. So we are tracking them right now, and that will go until the beginning of June. Sometime around the middle of April, sometimes it happens earlier, to the end of April, the loggerheads start coming in. They'll be coming in until around August. And then beginning of June, the green turtles start. They're the second largest species. They'll be coming in, and they will be nesting right through September. And we've even had them nest into October. Some years when we have really high counts.
So it's a little, at least for me, a little difficult to understand comprehensively what really we should be doing. Should we be turning off all the lights? Or should we insist that they go with the shaded / amber lights?
The second version, because no one's going to want to be in total darkness. It's not safe, first of all. A lot of your homeowners, I'm sure, will complain. Amber lighting is your best bet. I just came back from the permit holders meeting in February, and they talked about sea turtle lighting and which one was best. I wish I could repeat it for you right now, but I can't remember. But I can look it up. There are two versions of lighting. And it's the amber lighting that really helps the situation, does not affect the turtles. The white lighting does affect the turtles.
Yeah, my biggest challenge is the residents who want to be out there, even though we lock the gates. I can control the people from our association, but it just seems that people work around us on the beach and we'll catch a couple out there with flashlights. So it's easy to manage our own association, but as we look out there, we'll see people coming from different sides who want to actually tour the beach at that time. So that's probably, lighting isn't a problem, but controlling some of the residents has been a little bit of a problem.
Yeah, but that's gonna always be a problem unless we do hold an educational meeting even to let people know exactly what to do. Don't come up to a nest till the turtle's almost done and don't disturb them. They
Right.
won't go anywhere once they've started, but
Right, exactly.
can I ask Jeff? Jeff, do you mind, since you're the one that is walking the beach a lot? What in your Bermuda shorts? What is your suggestion that we do to help you?
Well, first, I wish I was walking this beach a lot.
Yeah, I can
Probably once every 2 months, we take a spin up and down, but our code compliance officer does go up and down during the day, during low tide only. Once a week, we have them going out, and that's about it. But right now, the issue that we have is that the ordinance that is antiquated and inadequate doesn't help us, because we get a lot of questions for people building homes, replacing windows. What light transmission should we have in the windows? What are the requirements? And then I point them to a small ordinance that we have with literally, 2 sentences. And then I strongly recommend that they go to the FWC website or follow the state guidance. And we usually get compliance all the time. But I have nothing to point to that's our own. I have to ask.
Right, you
That
can
I
recommend.
recommend, but I can't require. And what we do now is we are reactive, which we're continue to be reactive as we receive complaints from the permit holder. When we get those emails in, we immediately take care of it that next morning when we get the email, and we take care of it. This is going to be really helpful for us for new construction and remodeling, where this is going to help the most, because now we have definitive answers versus asking for recommendations and then maybe not wanting to take those recommendations and then having continued problems. For instance, I just give an example. One of the condos changed all of their downlights around their pool area, which faces the ocean, obviously on the ocean side. And, I said, well, now you have to keep them turned off during that time because they didn't want to buy the sea turtle lights. We're now be like, okay, now you're going to buy the shields for them. You're going to put the right color temperature in and the right light transmittance, and now we'll be good. Versus, the manager
Would you
leaves, someone
please?
turns the lights on, and then we have a complaint that we have to act on. This is going to help. This is long overdue.
Then let's do it.
Yeah.
Jeff, is Delray Sands a good citizen or a bad citizen in this regard?
So I actually don't recall any complaints specifically coming in for Delray. There have always been little odds and ends with most of the single families and some of the townhomes on the ocean. I don't actually specifically remember getting a complaint about them, but having this in place, I can talk with Derek up there and say, hey, please make a concerted effort to take care of this.
Thank you. We're here to help you.
You have a comment about Delray Sands. Did you?
She's not talking about the valet $10.
Well, the Delray Sands, I don't report to Jeff that because, the Delray Sands is a hotel and they're not they have a restaurant with a lot of white lights. However, I did meet their engineering GM the other day. His name is Mark. And he saw me out there. He goes, I'm glad I saw you. I'm going to make sure to shut the lights out. So I thought that was pretty good. But I just normally report the disorientation on my FWC reporting. I don't report the dollary stands to Jeff because I know there's not a whole lot we can do about that, but the buildings on either side sometimes, just as a note, there was one condo building just going under a lot of renovation, and one of the homeowners in there told me that all their new lights are going to be a real problem because they're bright white. And I was surprised because I really thought with the new codes that they might put amber lighting in when they're redoing the buildings, but that's just my thought. So
Okay.
Thank you. Go ahead, Roger.
Being a resident that has 4 vehicles that all have Sea Turtle license plates,
yes.
I wanted to ask you something. Is it the light that's deterring the turtle to come ashore to lay its eggs, or is it the lights that are attracting the hatchlings to go west instead of east?
Well, both in this point. The turtles, a lot of them will come up and nest or attempt to come up, even if there is white light out there. Who knows? I'm not out there. I encourage people not to go out there at night when they ask me, but the hatchlings, it's a definite yes, because if there are bright whites, hatchlings, when they come out of a dark sandy hole, their instincts are telling them to go to the brightest source of light. And on a natural dark beach, the sky over the horizon is the brightest source of light. So if they see white lights to the west, they're going to go towards that. And sometimes there's been plenty of mornings that I've been out there that I see tracks go west and north and east and just all over the place. So at this point, they're getting picked up by birds and crabs. A hatchling needs to get straight to the water fast in order to have any sort of survival rates.
All right, Ingrid, so what is it that you feel that your recommendation that we as the planning board should do?
Well, again, we're not specifically making a recommendation. Obviously, it's at the discretion of the board. All I could say again is this is based on the state model ordinance. I made a reference to that letter J about existing. If you wanted to be a shall, or if you wanted to make it more of a recommendation, the wording, again, that's used in the county's a recommended corrective action, because right now, if this gets adopted as it's presented to you, again, existing exterior and interior lighting are going to have to comply with these provisions that are in J. You're going to have to reposition, modify, remove existing lighting. You're going to have to replace fixtures, replace any light source, all these things. These are shall.
All right.
So,
Yeah, my recommendation personally is that they should be a shall. Why would we go ahead and do this and not help Jeff and the turtles themselves and leave it up to the individual? I think it should be a general hard recommendation.
Because she's saying that the cost for.
She's saying that the costs for existing properties might be quite exceptional.
well, I didn't say that, but are you talking about me?
Yeah.
I didn't say anything about the
I
cost,
think you
but again,
insinuated that.
when you look at the provisions under J, again, on page 36, reposition, modify or remove. I don't know that there may be a cost to that. Replace fixtures, possibly, right? Replace fixtures having an exposed light source with fully shielded fixtures. Okay. That may be a cost, obviously. Replace any light source, light bulb or lamp that is not long wavelength. So if it's a white light, replace it with the amber. Replace non-directional fixtures, provide shields for fixtures, right? That shield so the light goes down. So yeah, there may be an added cost to that, going through this list.
That I understand, but we are in basically Turtle Town here, people moving in, and they need to be aware of that. And
Are we erring on the side of recommending more, though? We're on the recommendation side.
The planning board, you're a recommending board, so you'll be making a recommendation to the commission. Ordinances are approved by the commission. So
Correct.
they'll take your recommendation, also the Natural Resources Preservation Advisory Board recommendation, whether they choose to agree with it or not, that's up to the
Correct.
commission,
And
but
that's-
you're a recommending board.
Correct. And that's I think you made that very, very clear. Thank you. So that's the position we're in. And then at some point, it comes down to enforcement. Okay.
but
That's right.
Ingrid, can we distinguish between commercial and residential?
The way the ordinance is written, it's not distinguished that way. It's, when you look at the applicability, let's go ahead and look at it. It's on page 32 of your packets. It's under the letter C. And it says the applicability of this particular ordinance shall apply to all properties within the town that may produce artificial light directly, indirectly, or cumulatively visible from any portion of the beach. So it's all properties, whether it's Delray Sands or not.
Yes, please.
When you say all properties, so it's all properties in Highland Beach, not necessarily properties only on the beach.
Well, the ordinance does go on to say that it can apply if you're on, as I mentioned earlier, if you're on the west side of A1A and the light can be seen from the beach, then the regulations will apply to you. If your light can't be seen from the beach, then obviously it wouldn't apply.
And is the code enforcement department asking for this to be instituted for all properties or only for new properties or new construction that's being done?
Again, the ordinance addresses new structures and it also addresses existing. If you could see it from the beach, then you have to comply with the ordinance.
But Jeff, you feel that you would like to have it a shall rather than just a would you please?
The issue that I'm concerned with is when we have a recommendation and we have a legitimate complaint coming from Joanne here, and we go out and say, hey, we really recommend that you change this light. And they say, well, it's a recommendation. And then it continues. And then every day we get the same complaint about the same property because it's a recommendation. You know, this is only for properties that are visible from the beach. Again, if you have somebody wants to put a street light in their parking lot across on the west side of A1A and put it 30 feet in the air, well, then it's going to apply because you can see it. It's not like someone who lives in Bellito is going to have to worry about their lighting. Okay. It's solely for the properties there, but in the absence of a shall, then we're back to where I'm at now, where I'm recommending that they go to the FWC website.
And you'd like to bring a bit more closure to
Right.
that.
And there's like they say, there's more than one way to do something. There's multiple options they have that Ingrid went over on, you know, with they can put a shield on, they can just change the bulb type. That doesn't mean they have to change the fixture. That doesn't, but we're going to be more reactive on this. It's not like we're going to pass this and then immediately start assessing every home. This is reactive. As we receive legitimate complaints that there are issues, now we have a tool in which we can address them. And I will say that it was 3 years ago that Barbara, who was then the permit holder, I promised her we were going to work on fixing this. And Ingrid has done an exceptional job, and we have had multiple meetings, but she has done all of the heavy lifting on this and really did her homework in order to bring this forward. And now we're just, you know, looking for some options that because we have to be realistic about, not realistic, we have to be objective about this in the way that it's the way that she presents it. But without a shall, I'm back to I'm back to I'm right where I'm at now.
Can I just make one clarification? The issue of the shall, just to bring clarity. It applies only for existing, right? The new structures, new construction or improvements to existing, the code as it's being, I shouldn't say the code, the ordinance as it's being proposed already has the shall, and that's consistent with the state model. It's just the issue of existing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Existing. Do we want to require that people do the repositioning and all that for existing? That's what's one of the
If we don't
items.
do that, then he's going to continue to
Yeah, he's
react.
gonna have the same
Correct.
problem.
All
For
of the
existing,
complaints
right.
come from existing structures.
Mhm.
We're not getting
Yes.
complaints from new construction because we're recommending and they're following through with the light transmittance and with the type of lighting, and they're making sure because we're recommending. So we don't have an issue with compliance.
Mhm.
All of the complaints are coming from existing structures. Now we have something to point to say, this is the standard that you must adhere to versus this is a standard that we recommend you adhere to. And if you choose not to, we're just going to have a continued problem.
And Ingrid, you said Boca and Delray are using shall?
Okay, Palm Beach County, I believe it is Delray. Yes, Delray has adopted by reference Palm Beach County Sea Turtle Lighting Ordinance. So Palm Beach County is a recommended corrective action for existing structures. It's not a shall, it's a recommended. It's recommended. Now, Boca Raton, they have certain provisions about you have to put window treatments on all windows visible from the beach, regardless of exposure. That's a shall in Boca. And as I mentioned, Golden Beach, which is a municipality comparable to Highland Beach, it's on A1A. They have a shall for those measures that are existing, repositioning. It's a shall for them.
Mhm.
So
So one other thing, Roger, go ahead.
I have a question. If
Don't know what it's on.
if I have a structure that's on the beach and I have a stairway down to the beach
Mhm.
and I have it all lit up for security purposes. Are you saying that you can actually change the type of lighting and that will still be fine? It'll still be like amber lights, will still create enough light for security, but it will not attract the turtles.
I think that would be a fairly correct statement. Again, you'll still have the light there, so it may not be so much somebody falling because they can't see where they're going. I mean, we'd have to look at it on a case by case
I mean,
basis, but
Jeff is nodding yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, we happens all the time. We
Yeah.
have it in landscaping lighting. We have people, they'll change it, they'll remove it, they'll put it to a new location, they'll shield it, they'll change the color. I don't think it's as big of an issue.
Then I would recommend at this point that we make some sort of closure or decision to this. What we need to do is make a recommendation to the commission then.
That is correct.
We need to put that in form of a
motion.
motion, and then I will make a motion that we approve the shall part of this information. Now, the only other question I have before we do that is what do we do about the light transmittal for windows?
Well, in the ordinance is proposed at 45%.
Okay, I think
So-
that's reasonable.
So really, if you're approving it, the ordinance already has the shall for existing, so you could just approve it as presented, but
Len, would you help me out then with
defer to
that?
Glenn there.
Yeah, no, if you are okay with the shall, it would just be a recommend approval to the
Exactly.
town commission.
Then
as presented.
that's what I recommend. Do we have a second?
Second,
All in favor?
I,
Aye. This way I think it'll help Jeff out. And we can move on then. Ms. Allen,
And Joanne, we thank you so much for
yes,
your efforts.
thank you for all your efforts.
Really do.
And you too, Jeff. It's important.
and
All right,
Ingrid.
Miss
Don't
Allen.
forget Ingrid.
We're always thanking.
Oh, no, that's what I was just about to say. You're in the batter's box again, Ms. Allen, the national treasurer, the Highland Beach treasurer.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna have to give you a plaque.
Was that treasure or treasurer?
Yeah, that's a plastic plaque, by the
Okay.
way. We don't want to spend any more money.
So
All right, this is discussion D, discussion of proposed changes, amendment concepts. Good luck with this, with the accessory facility and seawall regulations of the town code.
Okay.
Okay.
So there's a lot to discuss here. Before I get into it, I just want to reference that I passed out to all of you today on the dais some additional comment sheets that we received. These came directly from the Bellito HOA meeting. I referenced it in your staff report. Bellito had asked me to present the accessory marine facility amendment concepts. And so we got, I think, 3 additional comment sheets. So those are on the dais for you. At the February 7th, 2023 commission meeting, the commission had a discussion on these accessory marine amendment concepts, specifically on the public input meetings that were conducted in December 5th, 7th, and 13th. I believe several of the board members were in attendance. They not only discussed the summary of the public input meetings, but also discussed next steps. And the consensus from the commission was to move the item to the planning board for you all to discuss. This is going to be a lengthy discussion. The commission had asked that the board not rush, similar to the other initiative you all discussed in February, the zoning density, to not rush it. So I've indicated in the staff report that this is going to be an ongoing discussion item on your agendas. This is going to be somewhere between an 8 or 12-month timeframe. You could take these slowly. There's 7 concepts. You don't have to attack them all at once. You could go ahead and, roll. This is, I mentioned at the commission, so roll up your sleeves moment, take 1 or 2, discuss it. A lot of these, like most discussions, things kind of progress organically and, kind of see how you come to some consensus on it. Now, I did provide for you sort of a brief history as to how these amendment concepts came to be. On the page 223 of your packets, I talk about how I give you a little bit of a history here. Hold on. On page, 226 of your packets, I provide a brief history starting in November 17th of 2020. The commission authorized Greg Bobby, who was a vice mayor at the time, to sponsor a review of any proposed amendments to the current accessory marine facility regulations that we have in the code. The commission then considered in March of 2022 an introduction into these amendment concepts that were proposed by Mr. Bobby. And the commission's consensus was to establish a process review to include public participation and review by the planning board. And I do want to add, between November 17th of 2020 and March 15th of 2022, staff met with Mr. Bobby several times. We also met with the town's marine expert on a lot of these concepts that he was proposing and, further massaging them a bit. On April 19th of 2022, the commission provided direction as far as a process for review. They wanted the planning board to review the April 19th, 2022 commission meeting. I did make the board aware of that. They wanted you all to physically observe the existing canal lot widths and accessory marine facilities that are out there, including seawalls. You all did that in May of 2022. They asked that maps be created of the various waterway widths. Those were also completed. And so on and so forth. Then on, let's see here, talked about May, going out in June of 2022, the commission considered a review timeline for the amendment concepts, and the consensus from the commission was to engage input from the residents. And then on August 16th of 2022, the commission again considered an additional discussion on the review timeline and determined then to have those 3 public input meetings. So on page 225 of your packets, I provided an overview of the various public input meetings. These are the comments that we received. We had a big easel and we were writing down comments. So these are the comments from the easel board that were taken. Obviously, you have the comment sheets.
What page is that? Sorry.
That starts on page 225 of your packets.
Thank you.
You'll see the comments that were provided at the December 5th meeting, comments provided on December 7th, and comments provided on December 13th. Again, these came directly from, again, residents who were there. Also attached in your packet are the actual comment sheets that were filled out by some of the residents. Those were also attached. Now, as I said, there's a lot to discuss here. I provided for you the March 15, 2022 commission memorandum, which is on page 228, which talks about the amendment concepts. I'll be happy to go through the PowerPoint that I provided at the public input meetings where I go through each amendment concept. I provided how the code currently reads with regard to the amendment concept. Obviously, what we have in our code right now is not as detailed as some of the amendment concepts, but nevertheless, I provided what the current code says, and then I provided for each amendment concept a no action option. I'll be happy to do that if you all desire. You want to discuss it. As I said, I'll be happy to go through that just as a refresher if you like.
Roger.
I have a few questions.
Sure.
The BFE,
Mhm.
can you just define the BFE for me?
Sure.
Explain that in English. to
Yes.
BFC for anybody who might be,
It's the base flood elevation.
I
Right.
understand that.
So the base flood elevation, it's the anticipated height of floodwaters during a 100-year flood. And the BFE is determined by FEMA. Okay, so on the west side of A1A, and I mentioned this at the public input meetings, the current base flood elevation on the west side is 6 feet NAVD. It's pending 7 right now. So I actually provided a diagram. Maybe we'll go ahead and put up the PowerPoint, Linelda. So I provided this diagram at the public input meetings to very simply address what base flood elevation is.
So it's
Yeah.
6 feet above the mean average of high water. Is that correct?
Is Jeff? No.
NAVD is the high water mark, right? Or is it the average watermark?
I'll defer to Jeff. He can explain that a little bit further.
Mike,
MSL, it's the mean sea.
Jeff, Mike,
I'm sorry.
So it's mean sea level.
Mean
So-
sea- right, it's
so right
6
now
feet
it's
above.
6 feet above.
6 feet above mean sea level for the west side of A1A. The east side varies, which is
Exactly.
not right from 10 to 12 right now. But the west side, everything on intercoastal, almost everything on intercoastal is currently 6 feet NAVD.
So if
And-
it's 6 feet NAVD, and then you want to go 7 feet above that. Right, because it says maximum height for accessory facilities at base flood elevation plus 7 feet.
Are you reading about the piling height, the maximum, like?
proposed
It
amendment
says
number
proposed
1.
amendment on page.
Which one is this?
28.
Yeah, this is the maximum height for accessory marine facilities. So for boat lifts. And I could explain it. I'll show you how we address that in the meetings.
Okay.
So here's the amendment concept. This is the first one. A maximum height for accessory marine facilities would be at base flood elevation plus 7 feet. So what does the current code say about a maximum height for accessory marine facilities? There is no maximum height for accessory marine facilities. The only height reference, if you wish, that the code talks about currently is that there's a definition of boat lift, and you all are very aware of this, that the lift cannot be higher than the superstructure of the boat. That's the only reference that we have right now in the code, that the lift cannot be higher. There's not a maximum height. And then the no action option for this particular concept was if we had an exceptionally high accessory marine facility that was proposed. Right now, we have in the code the option to bring in a marine expert, because for boat lifts, the code is very clear. A boat lift cannot be a hazardous interference with navigation, endangered life or property, or deny adjacent property owners public reasonable visual access to the public waterway. So again, right now, the no action option, and I mentioned this at the public input meetings, if we had an application come in tomorrow that had an excessively high boat lift, that was outside the norm of what we're seeing coming into the town, we could right now bring in a marine expert and let he or she determine whether they are in compliance with these criteria. So let me just show you this. This is what I showed at the public input meeting, just for some examples here. Okay. So here is a lift here on the left. You could see that the top of the lift is at 7 feet 6 inches, and the superstructure of the boat, when lifted, is at 9 feet 7 inches. So in this particular case, it is consistent with the definition of boat lift. The lift is not higher than the superstructure of the boat when lifted. This property on the right, this one's in Bolito, got approved by the board. The lift is at 6 feet. You could see this is a newer home. So the current seawall is at 6 feet NAVD. It's at base flood elevation. And the superstructure of the boat is at 6 feet 6 inches. So again, this is consistent with the definition of boat lift. The lift is not higher than the superstructure of the boat. Now, what I provided here, this table, is some of the actual boat lifts that have come into the town as of January of 2020. Now, let me add, since I created this table, we've had some additional lifts that have been approved. So you could see here, this is the boat lift height. You could see that we had at 3833 South Ocean, we had a boat lift height at 7 feet 6 inches. 4205 and 4206 in Bolito, they came in at 7 feet 7 inches. And at 4318 South Ocean, we had it at 7 feet 8 inches. So at the public input meetings, I had mentioned to the people that were there, the amendment concept is saying that, is proposing that accessory marine facilities, boat lifts in particular, can only be at base flood elevation plus 7 feet. That was an arbitrary number. But when you see the actual data, when you see the actual height of boat lifts that are coming into the town, you could see we have a few that are over 7 feet. So I had proposed to the residents that were at the meeting, do you think that we should increase that height to 7 feet 7 inches, given that's the maximum that we've had come in? Or do you all feel we should not even have a maximum height for accessory marine facilities? Given right now, if we had something out of the norm, we'd have the marine expert come in. So that's sort of how we address that concept.
I'm just gonna say that there's a functional difference between different boat lifts based on the structure of the actual boat lift. When I drive my boat on the intercoastal and I see existing boat lifts during high tide or full moon, and the actual bottom of the boat is in the water.
Right.
The boat lift is not high enough, but how do you regulate a structure of an existing manufacturer's product, whereas one might be 6 feet and one might be 8 feet in structural height, and I think that by limiting it to 7 feet, it's going to be a problem, and I don't think that you should limit it to 7 feet. And I think that it really all different based on the different zones also, because I think in the last meeting, we had graphics of the different zones of the different areas of Highland Beach. But, there are certain areas that the tide kind of swoops in to basins or canals and may go up a little higher for a short period of time. But the other night on a full moon, I was out and there were boats that were in the water. On their
with the
lifts.
wave.
Well, I appreciate the comment. So then you feel that there should be no maximum height for accessory marine facilities, as there is right now. There's no maximum height in the code.
Well, I think
Jeff?
that some people could be problematic with having no maximum height. Because some people may want to try and do something that would
Hey,
push-
Jeff,
Remember
could be
the
not exactly
debacle,
attractive.
remember the debacle in Grand K? We had a 12-foot.
Right.
Yes.
That was a problem.
It was.
Right, and that's the problem. So, so that's why I was going to say one word to remind you, but when you evaluate this, and that's touche. That's the one
You
word.
mean like with
to-
swords?
Yeah, no,
Because
as
you
in,
can't mention any names.
as in a previous owner,
Yeah.
as in a settlement agreement. Yes.
And that was an issue.
Yeah, it was an
It was
issue
major.
because we had no maximum height. The good news is that as the sea levels rise, as tides rise, the base flood elevation will rise, which will then allow taller structures. So,
But
Hey, Jeff.
taller structures is one thing, but there are different manufacturers that have the ability to manufacture, that have products that manufacture, some with the mechanical devices on top, some have the mechanical devices on the bottom, some have them on the side. So then certain manufacturers just wouldn't be able to put their product in Highland Beach. I can understand that. I think you should have a maximum height, but I think that the maximum height of 7 feet, I don't think is high enough.
we don't either, because we're showing you data that some of these with them placed on, with the pumps and the, not pumps, but with the motors on top are at 7 feet 7 inches.
When we rode by Rogers Place, taking the tour, it was easy to see the space. But as we started getting into the canals, we saw deterioration of some of the walls. And a lot of that was affecting these lifts. And many of these lifts, I'm using the word many, some of the lifts that I witnessed were put in there still with deterioration, they would have made a different decision if the wall had changed or they had invested some dollars in those walls. Also, going down the canals, I was less concerned about the height as much as the ability to turn in the space. And I didn't think, and that was my personal opinion, but I was less concerned, Ingrid, as far as height, which I knew was going to be an issue. And I think Roger explains it well. But the ability to go down some of those canals, I said to myself, how were they able to get this accomplished? And then that's always a question that's up in the air.
Yeah, you mean like the navigation of the waterway?
Yep.
Yeah. Again, right now, we have provisions in the code about navigability.
Yeah, with the.
So,
of
right,
the
so
taxidermy facilities.
if you recall, since the Touche property was brought up by Jeff, I just want to make a point that when that application was initially adopted, I believe it was first adopted by the planning board in 2017. The plans that the planning board reviewed showed the pilings at 4 feet. It was once they started constructing that the building official at the time realized that, wow, these pilings, they're much higher than 4 feet. And then they stopped, right? They put a stop order, work order. I will like to say that we've come a long way since 2017 as to how plans are presented to the board. First of all, they are scaled. I don't remember if those plans were scaled. I could be wrong. Maybe they were. But we obviously have the applicant call out a lot of things. So we have them call out the pilings. We want to be sure that it's clear to the board what you're actually approving. And if you recall, once the Touchette property came back to the planning board, right, to get their pilings at a higher height, I believe that was 2019 or 2020, we did bring in the marine expert and they provided a report and they did have an issue with the 12 feet. The applicant then went ahead and revised it to 7. The marine expert then did a revised report and indicated in so many words that it was fine, the 7 feet, it was within industry standards, but we brought in that marine expert. And since then, we really haven't had the issue that we saw in Touchette. Again, we've come a long way in how the plans are presented. We review them to the best of our ability to find inconsistencies. Things are called out. So just for what it's worth, I want to point that out to you.
And a lot of this has to do with a thank you to you, Ingrid, and your staff, because otherwise we'd still be in the dark on a lot of these things. All right, so are there any proposals to change this proposed amendment?
I have a few more questions.
I'm sure you do. You are the voter.
I have a few more questions, and in reference to the navigation of the canals, there's only been one canal in Highland Beach that I've been down that I find it difficult to be able to navigate, and that's on the southern part of Highland Beach. But other than that, the canals are navigable. I navigate quite well with a boat that's 17 feet in beam through my canal, and there's a lift that's approved at the end of the canal that's on the apex of a person's property. So I have a question about the proposal of the 25-foot encroachment into the water.
Which one is that? 5,
Number
4?
4.
Okay.
So are there current restrictions on piles and dolphin piles in Highland Beach?
How far they encroach?
How far they encroach into the water?
Sorry. Here is the amendment concept. This is number 4, right? Encroachment into the water is 25 feet or 25% of the waterway width measured from the shortest distance adjacent to the property line, whichever is less. I think that last part is as to where you measure it from. There needs to be some tweaking to that. And there was discussion about that, the public input meeting. The current code right there, the code says right now that docks and mooring structures may extend to the distance allowed by U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They regulate both the intercoastal waterway as well as the canals and lakes. We actually met with Army Corps of Engineers, Jeff and I, back in 2020 of March, and they made it very clear that they regulate the waterway. So that's what the code says. The code says if Army Corps says it's good as far as encroachment, it's good for the town of Highland Beach.
Right, and the Army Corps says that you have to be more than 45 feet from the apex center of the canal. You can't encroach past 45 feet. So, but the 25 feet into the waterway, is that for a structure or for a vessel?
That's for a structure.
So if that was a structure and then you wanted to put a pile 50 feet out, are you allowed to do that?
Right now in the code, if Army Corps signs off on it, then that's fine. There's no regulation as far as mooring pilings in the code.
Okay. And then I had a comment on one of the recommendations that was in the December 13th meeting was talking about floating docks. You don't have the ability to regulate floating docks in Highland Beach.
And this was also brought up at the public input meeting, and I'm going to read it from you, to you from the code. Here it is. So floating docks are permitted. This is in section 30-68, subject to conformance with all zoning code requirements herein and compliance with all applicable building codes. So floating docks really should, if there is a site setback requirement, that's what the code says.
You're not allowed to do that. The Florida State Attorney has an opinion that was published that says that you cannot regulate floating docks at a greater amount than the state of Florida has, and the state of Florida recommends that floating docks are used to be able to stop boats from leaching their metals into the water and causing damage to the sea life. And so there's actually no restrictions on floating docks as opposed to setbacks. And that opinion actually is published, and the city actually, the town actually has a copy of it.
Jeff?
I just like to make sure that we're not confusing floating vessel platforms with
Right.
floating docks.
Those are platforms. you're
Yeah.
talking about.
Those are different.
Oh, what's the
Those are two-
difference?
A floating vessel platform that we cannot regulate, or we are very limited on our regulation, I believe is what you're referring to. That is a platform that is specifically designed to lift a vessel out of the water. It's a floating, and we often hear this where people talk about there's a difference between a floating dock and a floating vessel platform. Floating docks, we can control and permit. Floating vessel platforms, we are very much limited by the state statute that allows them. So
Can you tell me the difference between a floating dock and I understand
The floating vessel platforms
but
you
what's
drive
a
on.
floating
Yeah.
dock according to your definition?
a floating dock is something that you're going to put out and then maybe you're going to sunbathe on it, jump off. You want to float it. You're going to put your
Or moor your vessel against.
Put a hot tub on it.
vessel against it, whatever you want to do. But the floating vessel platform, which is highly deregulated, I guess you can say, by the state, it limits our involvement. Those are specifically for floating vessel platforms, which are specifically designed to lift a vessel completely out of the water.
Similar to
Understood.
the personal watercraft floating.
Yes, that
That's
would be a floating
primarily
vessel
what they
platform.
are, the drive-ons.
Yep. It lifts the vessel. Its specific use is to lift the
Lift it
vessel out of the water.
And if I may add, the town of Highland Beach, we have a residential floating vessel platform / floating boat lift exemption certification application. So that's available on the town website. So we have people sign that, right? We attach Florida statute that they are exempt, but we have them fill out the application as well.
It's an application for exemption?
Yes.
Well, yeah, it's just certifying that they're exempt.
Yeah.
All right. Roger, any other? I have one, but when you're done.
You go right ahead.
Oh, thank
I'll
you.
wait.
On 6, requiring a ladder for every 50 feet of dock. One of the residents in our Regency, one of our ladders are the older type. And at low tide, the ladder is totally out of the water. And it's of actually no use except for a boat. But I think we all discussed in all the public meetings that these ladders were there for, God forbid, someone falls into the water or they need to get out of the water rather quickly. And if we should make some length that at mean low tide, these ladders extend into the water.
Well, all new ladders that are installed have these,
Yeah,
you lift them up and then they drop down.
right, they have adjustables.
Right.
So I think then either they have to be adjustable ladders or extend into the water. And that was thank you to Rob Jacobs, one of our residents who took a picture of it. And I do have that on my handy dandy, if anybody wants to see it.
Do you want to discuss how you want to require a letter, like for a certain amount of feet of dock? Here's the amendment concept, again, how it was presented at the public input meetings. So was it require a letter for every 50 feet of dock? I mentioned right now the current code is silent on docks, on ladders. And then I provided here a table of what other municipalities require. I don't know if you want to delve into that as
But I
well.
thought at the public meetings, it was sort of, we came to some sort of consensus that either a seawall or it had to be on a seawall or a dock at every 50 feet. I think
Okay.
that's what we,
She's not saying every 50 feet, she's saying every 50 feet of dock.
Yeah,
well,
you
Dock
place
is
a
different
ladder.
than the property line.
mm,
There's only, if you have 100-foot property line, if you have 100-foot property line, you're only allowed to have a 50-foot dock because you have 25-foot setbacks currently.
but some people do not have docks at all.
Right.
And we talked about having ladders put on the seawalls. At a number of the public meetings. That, you know, obviously, we're not gonna go back and. That these people would be grandfathered, but if there's a new seawall put in,
But doesn't the Army Corps of Engineer require a safety ladder for every property?
I'm not aware. I'm not sure what they require.
I don't think that in the discussions we had, there was none.
I
and I
can't
think
speak
that's
for
what
Army
this-
Corps. I'm not sure
yeah,
what their
I
requirements.
just
are.
remember the company that was putting in my boat lift told me that we were required to put in a safety ladder on the property. And I don't know what the requirement was from.
Well,
Maybe it came from one of the either FDP or Army Corps. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and that would override any recommendation that we had, so that would be something to look into, I would think.
Yeah.
Jason?
Yeah, we just, I think Roger got the same advice we got from B and M, and we put safety ladders on all of our docks.
Well, Donna, you don't have to put it on the dock. You have to have it on the property.
Yeah, we could have done that, but we elected to use the dock.
Okay.
And
Ingrid,
they're proposing a 10-foot setback, I'm sorry, right?
Yes. We can go back to
as
that.
opposed to a 25-foot
Yeah.
setback.
and I think our gentleman in the back there has comments on that one, don't you, Doctor?
Oh.
Can he give it?
Yeah, I don't see a reason, if he's here, you want to make a comment, Doctor? Any inputs appreciated? Please identify yourself.
Hi, Dr. Carl Johansson at 2358 South Ocean. I have a single family home in what's known as the Bird Beach.
So you informed us
District.
and we all learned that, yes.
And I submitted, and I think you may have in your packet, letters from 14 members, or 14, not members, but single family homeowners that have a position similar to mine. And we are opposed to changing the 25-foot setback. We all purchased our homes knowing we had the 25-foot setback. We purchased it for that specific reason, is that there was no encumbrance of the view that we had and enjoyed the intercoastal north and south. We enjoyed the privacy of not having a facility close to our property line. And I just want to emphasize that we have 17 single-family properties in the Bird Beach District. I did get 14 of those single-family members to support my position.
Are they all on the intercoastal or on both sides?
All on the intercoastal.
Okay.
And I've done some research with Ingrid, and that over the past 15 or 20 years, there have been 3 applications made to the planning board to get an exemption from the 25-foot setback. two were approved and one was denied. We haven't had any recently. So I think the checks and balances that presently exist are adequate to conform with the present 25-foot setback. If someone wishes to get one with a fewer setback, there's a mechanism that's worked pretty well in the past, is that they come to you and ask for permission, and with the right credentials and approval of neighbors and other situations that may prevail, that you can either approve or deny based on those provisions. So I'm here and I'll probably attend most of your meetings when I'm in town to emphasize the fact that there's a very passionate group of 14 homeowners in the Bird Beach District who would like to keep the 25-foot setback.
Thank you for your input, and it will be taken under advisement. I believe that we had discussed previously, I hate to use the word zones, but zones, different restrictions for different areas, like Bellito versus Bird Beach, or the intercoastal versus canals. So that we're taking that under advisement.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your
Appreciate your
input.
attention. Thank you.
Is there any other
Yeah.
discussion on this
Yeah.
part? Go ahead.
Ingrid, I think one of the areas of concern are the canals, the side streets, Russell, Bel Air. Some of those, the boats it's zero setback. Because they are small townhouses and there's no room. And you're saying now we go 10%, I think, on those type properties. So what do you do with them? Is grandfathered? The boats have got to be grandfathered type thing,
Yeah, they
right?
would be grandfathered. Yeah, just if I could just back up here, here's the actual amendment concept. Just to give you all a little bit of background. So the amendment concept is a 10-foot side setback for all zoning districts. And for lots less than 100 feet in width, the setback is 10% of the width. However, the setback cannot be less than 5 feet. Now, what the current code requires for single-family zoning districts is 25-foot setback. If your lot is between 50 and 70 feet wide, it's a 15-foot side setback. And there is for multifamily right now, as you mentioned, right now, there is no side setback. Both basins have a 25-foot side setback. I'm sorry, Linelda, can we move that little? It's kind of cutting off that no action option. Can you move that little screen or not? Yeah. It's okay if you can't. I could just read it out loud.
Well, why don't you just read
Yeah.
it out loud at this point? Yeah, there it is.
Ah, okay.
Her magic.
So right now, if we have if somebody can't meet, let's say, the 25-foot side setback, the code does allow them to go for variance. You have to show a hardship. There's other variance criteria. So that's how we can address it now, or redesign your boat lift so that you can make it work. Yeah, we'd love to hear more discussion about multifamily. It sounds like for multifamily, you don't want to implement this proposed 10-foot side setback?
10%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Personally, I think it'd be very hard to
10% of the width.
follow, really.
Well, again, since we have Jeff here, Jeff, have you had any issues with any of this? We're lucky enough to have him here today, so let's take advantage.
So we haven't had the issues that we've been having. First of all, these amendment concepts are specifically for accessory marine structures such as the dock or boat lift.
Correct.
Nothing prohibits you from owning a 70-foot boat and putting it on a 70-foot wide lot. That's where we've had trouble, where someone has a 70-foot wide lot. They bought a 68-foot boat
they
and then
competed
ended up
on-
putting a swim deck on it and then a dinghy off the back of that. And now it encroaches on, either based on, the wind and the tide. So that's where we've had trouble. So then what happens when you have three neighbors in a row with 70-foot lots that all want 68-foot boats? Somebody's not getting in and somebody is getting in. That's really more of the bigger problem we're having. As far as the setback, we have issues because complaints that people come to you when someone in a multifamily area with a zero wants to put something in, and a neighbor thinks it's too close. You've heard those arguments, but
Yeah,
our
but I know
issues,
specific-
right, our issues, because you can put a dock in Bird Beach that meets the setbacks, and then on an
Yeah.
80-foot lot, and then
Have
put a
100-foot
75-foot
boat.
boat. So to me, the setbacks for the dock and the boat lift aren't quite as relevant because they can always just put a really large boat there anyway. And I understand it, the frustration, and I'm agreeing with you, that it certainly could be a problem, but if you could say, well, I'll just buy a big boat and put it there, and now I don't have a setback. There are no setbacks for the boats. That's the problem. And that's where we have a problem.
Do your suggestion saying that we should have a setback for the boats? Or are we allowed
No,
to
that's
do that?
not being proposed.
being
Again, the
proposed.
board can
But-
make any recommendation you
Yeah,
want to there.
That's what I,
Right.
you know,
This is again specific for structures. So the
Right.
Right.
dock,
Yeah.
a boat lift,
Yeah.
right? Not the boat.
And because you asked me where we're having issues.
that's where I
that's
want
where
to know.
we're
We
having
need to
issues.
help
We're
you.
having issues, and I have a 70-foot lot and I want to buy a 68-foot boat, put a swim deck on it, and then put a dinghy on the back of that.
Yeah, that was threatened in a previous issue that we had with Touche. That he said, oh, well, and I'll just buy a 1,000-foot boat and,
Yeah, that is correct. And he can do that. Anyone can do that. If they, they're gonna, if it's big enough, they're gonna have the barnacle maintenance on it anyway,
That's not our issue.
yeah.
So so this would then not be included in our recommendations to the commission? Ingrid?
What would not be included?
The setbacks on a marine boat.
The
a
I mean,
boat,
mooring
a
boats?
vessel.
Yeah, the mooring restriction.
If you want to add it, you can by all means create a new concept that you want to move forward to the commission.
And Roger,
You
have
may
you?
want to massage it a little bit more.
Yeah.
you
I
brought it up
understand that.
now,
And
maybe-
your thoughts, Roger. Roger
Yeah.
has the big boat.
Again, this is a long process, so you may
Yeah.
want to think about it and maybe in
I
April, bring
think
it
I
up
want
again.
to,
Yeah,
but
by all means.
I think it's really important to be neighborly. And
I agree.
and in our basin where I live, there's an issue with a boat. And the owner of the boat chose to move the boat to be neighborly. And I just think you're not going to be able to restrict somebody. I have 100-foot lot and I could put a 99-foot boat on my property. And I just think you have to be neighborly. I don't think you're going to be able to restrict that.
But part of the problem with these amendments and the rules and regulations are not for the neighborly people. It's for the unneighborly people. So I think we've had enough of discussion on that for today. Do we all agree?
Can I,
I think it ought to be considered though.
Yeah, absolutely. But we're not,
you didn't touch on all the concepts and that's fine. If I can just sort of recap, and then, as I said, we could bring
Okay.
this back to you in April for you to further massage, further
Maybe, yeah.
analyze.
other people are here.
Yeah, so what I've gathered from my notes, and correct me if I'm wrong, with regards to a maximum height for accessory marine facilities at basement elevation or 7, there's some discussion that maybe it's not high enough, right?
Right.
Correct. That's,
Okay.
Not high enough, but there should be a limit.
Okay. So then that will come back to you. I'll put in a memo form. You could further massage it, further discuss it.
thank you.
The other issue is ladders on seawalls, safety ladders on docks, and there was also some discussion about adjustable, that there be an
Yeah,
adjustable ladder.
Or the length needs to be in the water at Low mean tide.
Okay. And with regards to the 10-foot setback, again, there's concerns with regards to, well, as I put here, concerns with regards to the canals. I thought that was more for navigation. I don't know if that was specific to the 10-foot setback. But I also heard that the 10-foot setback for multifamily doesn't seem very reasonable, right? It seems that you're not very content on moving forward with
There
implementing a
needs to be
10-foot
more
setback.
discussion on
Okay.
that.
Okay. Navigation. And then possibly a setback from the mooring of boats.
Yes,
Okay,
I
that'll
think
come
that, I understand as Roger's point of being neighborly, but I think we're doing this for the unneighborly types. And I think that that's where, again, I've heard more issues, and so has Jeff, that, you know, I can't see out of my property because I got a boat sticking in my face, or I can't dock my boat because somebody else is interfering. So I'd like to bring that up again.
Okay. Anything else that for further discussion next meeting? And you could talk about some of the other concepts that you didn't address today. Just
Right,
said
I mean,
low and slow, right?
yeah, well, we're also expending
not
a
low,
lot of
but
time, right?
Slow moment.
And I
Yeah.
think you might need a drink for your throat at this point,
Yeah.
You're talking a lot.
Not feeling too well. It's okay.
All right, so we'll turn this back and refer it back to Ms. Allen. Any other further discussion?
Not on this particular item. Again, you've given me enough input and it'll come back to you at your April agenda for further discussion.
All right, are we discussing anything about zoning at this point?
No, I could just touch real quick. I did send an email to the board members regarding that
Thank you,
zoning
Jen.
district, the zoning district density review. So it was supposed to go before the commission this past Tuesday. They decided to postpone the item.
Yeah, I bet
Yeah.
they did, till after the
So-
election.
Yeah, so I was advised by the.
Full commission.
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
I was advised by the town manager that it will probably go on the April agenda.
No.
Right, so they want to fine tune a little bit more, maybe even bring on a sponsor, a commission sponsor, similar to what we had for the accessory marine facilities. We had a commission
Yeah.
sponsor. And we wanted to follow that same public input format where you go to the public with digestible concepts rather than a very broad, what do you think about zoning density? I think it could be a bit overwhelming. So that was discussed with the commission and they'll tweak it a little bit more and come back.
Mr. DeMoss had a suggestion
Yes.
that maybe you could.
Okay,
So are we limited to these current zoning density proposals? Can we invent a new one type thing?
Invent.
For instance, you've got the side streets, which is the big concern based on what the last meeting. In that, could we have an existing neighborhood density?
Remember, we
Type
had that,
concept?
yeah. as-
right now, yeah, I mean, that's a good question. Right now, the density is based on the zoning district, right? Each zoning district has a corresponding density component.
The zoning district is who?
The zoning, so we have a variety of zoning districts, right? So we-
Within our town.
Right, correct.
Right. And I'm just proposing a new district,
Mhm.
possibly for the side streets to give it more
Or, yeah,
flexibility.
or even use that in all the districts we have. As an example, I think that hit Brian was the developer that was here
Mhm.
that, were you on Zoom at the time? The developer was here and he wanted to redo the property.
Right,
And he was not allowed to do it because the density in that individual property would
Right.
change. And if he let it go fallow, it would just be a mess
right.
and it would not benefit the town. We don't want to overpopulate the town.
No, of course
So
not.
I understand the comment. You want to create possibly a new zoning district then?
Or use the zoning districts we have and be able to alter them a
And
bit
tweak it.
to have, to have existing density. Not the,
On, just to give you an example, on Bel Air, you have 1018 to 1022. It's a 3-unit complex. It's a townhouse, 3 townhouses. It was built in 2008.
Right.
So it seemed like something went through the cracks back then to
It
get
does look
those
like
done.
that, doesn't it?
Huh?
It
Yeah.
does look like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
it's a beautiful 3-town complex. It adds to the street, it adds to the community.
Right.
So
I've
I
been,
just thought
that,
that's for what it's worth.
that property is brought to my attention before. I'm not quite sure how that got built. It's, I believe, not compliant with the density requirements of that particular zoning
So,
district.
No,
But
but
again,
obviously though, but if there's a damage to that property in some way and it needs to be rebuilt,
they will have to comply with current code. the
right?
way it goes.
And if the developer doesn't want to take that on because of the density, then that property is, that whole street will have a problem because of that property, which I think is what we want to try to protect the residents from being overpopulated, but at the same time, assist everybody
Yeah.
to keep it.
Yeah, given this
Populated.
density zoning review, it's not on the agenda today. I appreciate the comment.
understand.
Yeah, and if you can hold that comment to when it comes back, I've made a note of it.
Yeah,
But I think that's a valuable comment to have, yeah.
Okay.
And you'll further massage it when it comes back.
All
See
right.
what kind of direction the commission gives on
it
it.
is
I-
now a considerable time and it has ruined my my percentages, but anyway, all right, let's move on to item 10 announcements. March 13th, 2023 at 6 p.m. is the FDOT public meeting. I know there's been some issues with that and I expect it to be well attended. We won't get into that today. And I don't understand why it has not come in front of the planning board, but that's a different story. March 14th, 2023, 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Highland Beach general elections, and we hope everybody participates. March 15th at 1 p.m. Code Enforcement Board regular meeting. March 21st, 2023, 1:30 p.m. Town Commission meeting. And I think that's right. One more page. April 4th, 2023, 1:30 p.m. Town Commission meeting. April 11th, 2023, 1 p.m. Code Enforcement regular board meeting. And April 13th, which I hope will be well attended, 2023 at 9:30 a.m. The Planning Board meeting, regular meeting. Anybody make a recommendation or a motion for adjournment?
We don't have a motion, just adjourn the meeting. We don't need a motion.
Second.
Meeting adjourned 11:10. Thank you all.
I'll miss April. Like, if we can, Lenota, will we have capability to Zoom
In April?
in April?
Yes. Mrs. Form has to be present.